Hello and welcome back to Noxcast, an Equinox news recap podcast. I'm your host, Charlotte King. I'm the managing executive editor of the Equinox.
And I'm Nathan Hope, the news editor of the Equinox, and this week we are joined by the executive director of the Granite State News Collaborative, Melanie Plenda.
Thanks so much for having me. It's really exciting.
Thanks for coming on. We're glad to have you.
Of course.
So to start off, we have something a little bit different from our typical, jumping right into the top stories from the week because yesterday, as of recording this, Wednesday, November 20th, had to check the date, but we had a little bit of a breaking news moment, which is always exciting for us. You never know when something is going to come up on campus, but yesterday there was a big power outage across the majority of campus. Very sudden. It was around 11 a.m. I was in the middle of a class and all of a sudden the whole room, we had no idea what was going on. But so we were able to kind of leap into action and make sure that we got coverage out and let everybody know what was going on, because I know for a lot of people this was like a big, confusing and potentially kind of alarming moment. But so I'll pass it to Nate because honestly I think it's your brief. Go ahead and talk about the process of covering that.
Yeah, well, the first way that I found out about it was because you texted me and said that the power went out in the Mac, and it was in the middle of recording a show in the broadcast studio, which must have been a little bit jarring. But shortly thereafter, everybody got the owl alert to their phones saying the power was out for most of campus. I believe like the library was one of the main areas that power was not out. And so I just sort of ran the bases from there. I did source the email and the alert, but then also I did call the power company. I didn't get too much out of that, but I reached out to the assistant director of the facility services, and that was like the main nugget of information that we got from that is the cause of it, which was a squirrel got electrocuted at a switchboard behind Owl's Nest 3. But he was very straight to the point in his email. He just said, squirrel got fried. And I was like, okay. So we put that out and we got photos. We had a couple people take photos, got those edited in a timely manner. And I got to say, our multimedia director, Jacob Hall, really stepped up in this case. He went to the student center and got students' experiences of where they were when the power went out, because it's kind of an unusual thing for so much of campus to just kind of go dark for a little bit. I suppose there would be like worse times of the day for that to happen. If it was like in the middle of the night or something, and then it's like complete darkness. But, it was a little over an hour and everybody was fine except for the squirrel, unfortunately. But I don't know. When breaking news stuff happens like that, it's kind of just like when I feel most like a reporter, like I'm doing the thing of handling a live story that's kind of like developing as I'm writing, and then updating the website every like 10 minutes of any update or tweak we made to the story. So it was really exhilarating, and glad that we got all that information out there in a timely manner. I was going to ask you, Melanie, about sort of your experience reporting on breaking news when as a reporter.
Well, let's see. I actually I have two stories, but one also involves a squirrel. I had a very similar experience. I was working for the Sentinel at the time, and the city's power went out, and it turned out to be those pesky squirrels that can't stop biting on wires. Which it got me actually one of my first really angry emails from a reader, because at the time, and in my defense, I was young, but at the time, it struck me as funny that a squirrel kind of bit it and it caused this whole city outage, And so I think I had a lead that was something like, the squirrel went out with a bang, not a whimper, or something that was probably, I should have rethought it. I, at the time, thought it was funny, and some readers did not. So I definitely heard about it, so learned a lesson there. But another one that was less funny, in 2005, I think it was, the floods, the historic floods. I had never covered anything like that. And I remember, I think I was the weekend reporter at the time, again at the Sentinel, and I remember my editor calling me at like 7 in the morning. He's like, get in here and pack a bag, because we didn't know how long we were going to be there. We were not going home. And so I did. And I was there for 48 straight hours, and just, they brought in pizza, and you're just running on adrenaline. And it's those times where everything feels like it's chaos around you, and you have to be really focused on what you're doing, because not only do you have to get that story, and you don't even exactly know what the story is or who's going to be available, so you have to think on your feet, you have to be creative, but you also have to stay super focused so that you're being accurate and you're telling that story, because so much can change. There's always a lot of uncertainty, especially at the start of a breaking news story. So you just have to be so careful. And I just remember being just you get almost tunnel vision, like, okay, you take one thing at a time and just kind of work through it. But yeah, it was, you hate to say it is some of the most exciting times of being a reporter, but it is, because it's often something terrible has happened, but except for that squirrel. I still say it was still a little funny. I'll just admit it. But yeah, I would say that it is one of the more exciting times for sure, but very nerve-wracking, very stressful. And I'm pretty sure I slept for like a full day after that ordeal. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think adrenaline is definitely the name of the game there, in terms of just like, I mean, like you say, you don't know what it is yet. You don't know what you're even working on, at least not in full. And so, yeah, in an instance like that, I was just so, like, being here in the Media Arts Center at the time, I was so like, we'll do something. I don't know exactly what it is yet. But it is super exciting to just see like everybody kind of kick into high gear, and to kind of come together and operate as a unit like that, where it's like, okay, we have to get the brief written up, we have to get the photo, we have to get the video, we have to, all these different like multimedia elements to just kind of pull together the package and say, all right, Keene State, here's what's going on. And so, and admittedly, we did also, we had a little bit of fun in terms of how we described it, because I can't remember, was it the headline?
Yeah, I changed the headline after I found out the thing about the squirrel. I did like power restored after squirrel-induced outage.
Yeah. You couldn't resist.
Yeah. And we all love squirrels, I'm sure.
Sure.
And were the situation different,
Yeah.
We would love that, but,
Yeah, it's very sad, but it is true.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, I do think that like one way or another, it ends up being, not only one of the most just exciting experiences for a reporter, but also those are kind of the things that build you up as a reporter. Yeah. I've been at the Equinox for a couple of breaking news instances, and whether it's the experience of like jumping in just to copy edit what's about to go out, or having to write something up, or whatever it may be, like it really puts that pressure on to say, okay, I have to be there. I have to really, like you say, maintain that focus, and make sure that we can get this information out there. But
I would say too, like, it's those moments when you discover the strengths and the superpowers of your team, and I feel like it's when, yes, it's exciting for your own personal reasons, but I always felt too like everyone sort of feels the immediacy of our job. People need this. And so we are going to put aside whatever else is happening so that we can come together and provide this to people. I really have, it was always in those breaking news moments when, especially like natural disasters and things like that, where it may not be spoken, but it is a sense of community, not only in the newsroom, but what we are doing for the community, and that it's needed. And that we won't sleep until they have it. And I always appreciated that takeaway from it. And I feel like it makes a newsroom stronger and reminds you of why you're doing what you're doing,
Absolutely. Yeah. It really reminds you of the mission. And I do want to give, we said it already, but a double shout out to Jacob, our multimedia director, who, is not somebody who like typically would be part of sort of that breaking news operation, but we were both in the Mac at the time, and he walked up to me and said, "I'm going to go grab a camera from the office and see what I can do." And I said, "Go for it, man."
Oh,
And
that's
we
awesome.
were able to get that reel up on our social media, like maybe like 3 hours after.
Yeah, over the course of like from 11 when it started till like 2 or 2:30, I think we got like everything up.
Yeah.
Everything was edited and ready
That's
to go.
incredible. That's great.
No,
So
I
it
was
great.
super proud of everybody at the Equinox for the turnaround time on that. So fun stuff.
Yeah.
I think we can go ahead and transition from here into talking more about our top stories, but I do want to afford some additional focus to our top story from region and state this week. As we've mentioned several times on Noxcast before, almost all the content in our region and state section is sourced from the Granite State News Collaborative, and so in honor of having Melanie here, I want to kind of give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about the collaborative and the work that you do.
Absolutely. So the collaborative is essentially, it's a collective of more than 20 local news, higher ed, and some community organizations who have all agreed to come together to work together so that more people get more news that they need. That's essentially our mission. And we do that in a lot of different ways. But the way that you're talking about right now is this partnership of local news outlets who have agreed to share with each other any news story that they've produced of statewide interest or impact. And there's a lot of outlets actually who are like, yeah, just take whatever you want. It's great. And then any of the partners in the collaborative can republish any of those stories free of charge. No one's ever charged for this on any of their platforms. And a couple years ago, we made the decision we really wanted to bring college newspapers into the partnership for a variety of reasons, but one of which is you guys really, you do great work. You do. And from that perspective, we thought, well, one, the local news outlets can get a perspective and get a sense of I hate to say this because it makes me sound so old, what young people think and what they care about. But that's important because a lot of times newsrooms are filled with a lot of oldsters who don't necessarily know, who aren't necessarily in touch. And this is one way, for the newsrooms to understand what's going on in your communities. And then vice versa. Like, I think there's a big push all the time. We talk about, oh, young people are leaving the state, and why are they leaving the state? Well, my humble opinion, it's because we don't make them feel like this is their home. Why would someone stay in a place that doesn't feel like their community or their home? And by bringing some of the issues that are going on in the communities surrounding the campus, which includes the campus, we can help students understand what is going on in their community. If they want to go talk at a city council meeting or a school board, they can because they are part of the community. But they can't do that if they don't know those issues. They can't do that if they are unaware. So we really saw that as an effort to help, bring help college students feel like they were part of the broader community because they are. And then additionally, we feel like it has the added benefit of, and I've seen this, a lot of our local news outlets, they regularly are looking for reporters and they don't always know who to pick. And when they see the work of young reporters over and over again, they're like, oh, I like that one. I'm gonna, and I've seen people just get recruited right out of after graduation, because they've been able to see the work over time. So it's just multiple benefits to being able to do that. The last thing I'll say is, this partnership more broadly has meant that we've cross-published more than 7,000 stories across the time that we've been doing this. And it's a short amount of time. And when you break that down, it's like something, I think I did the math and I'm probably going to mess it up again, but it's like something like 35 additional stories for all of these outlets per week, which is like the equivalent of adding like 2 or 3 reporters, to your staff. So it helps the newsrooms to be able to really get more information out to people that's actually by locals, that's trusted, that's vetted, and that's so important. So that's why we do what we do, and that's only one of the many things that we do, but that's a big part of our work, and we really love having the college outlets in our partnership.
Yeah, I think something that I talked about a little bit when we went to New Orleans for the National Fall Media Conference. I talked to a couple other students from other publications about how we actually, have this resource available to us, and they're always like kind of amazed because I don't think there's that many other states that have something as structured and built out as the Granite State News Collaborative, and it's great too. Also, there's a lot of other sessions that we went to, and some of them talked about how student media can fill gaps that the traditional professional media might not pick up on. So I think it's a great way to just sort of make sure that all the bases are being covered. And if one person doesn't get, one story, then the other person gets the other. And it's really just helping each other out versus, the old mentality that I think was, every publication against each other, who's going to get the first scoop out about this thing or that thing. And it's a lot better to be able to work together and not be adversarial towards each other, especially with, how tough the journalism industry is nowadays. So, yeah, I definitely really appreciate it. And it definitely makes, as, being at a student media organization, make me feel more like on level with these other publications and more recognized, because there are, some people that do unfortunately still view it as less legitimate, which, I don't think is necessarily fair, because I think, we hold ourselves to a lot of the same ethics, standards, etc. as any other publication. So, yeah, it means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of a college media organization that is partnered with the collaborative, and to be a part of such a just big network of reporters all across the state who are doing such amazing work every single day, and being able to kind of connect all of our outlets in that way, to just ensure that there's always the best possible reporting happening, regardless of where and how and when and who, and because campus communities can be something very sort of out of the way. It can be very insular. It can be very separated from, even you look at an instance like Keene State, there are things that go on campus that somebody living their life in Greater Keene is probably not going to be aware of, or at least not for however long. And so I do think that it's both our privilege, but also our responsibility to make sure that, that information is out there. And so the ability to then share that with the entirety of the Granite State is such an amazing opportunity.
That just made my heart happy. I'm so happy to hear that you guys feel that way. It's likewise very mutual. We're very happy to have our college partners with us and fighting the good fight.
And we do always get excited. We'll see like even the Clock or the New Hampshire, the other USNH papers. We'll see stories from them in the collaborative and go, oh, I wonder what they're writing about this week.
That's awesome.
All right. And so on that note, we can go ahead and get into our top story from region and state this week, which concerns something which was also the topic of our editorial. So we'll kind of have a fused discussion, as we sometimes do. But this week we had an NHPR article about the gun reform legislation that has been sort of, it continues to be a hot button issue, something that is definitely on a lot of people's minds. But in this instance specifically, the hospital in Concord, we're approaching the 1 year mark since the shooting that occurred there in 2023. And so, once again, it's on people's minds. It's something that we want to kind of push to make sure that we are taking appropriate action about. And the news as it is looking right now, basically the legislation is going to be held off until the next legislative session, which will be for next year, 2025. And so we're looking at, another delay of this bill. And so in terms of our editorial, we talked about the fact that, when you have an instance like that of this bill is no longer being pushed, it's sort of sitting where it is. It's really it's kind of an admittance of it's not going to happen this time around. We're saying that despite how much of a heated issue it is and how much this continues to prove its relevance to really any community, but just the New Hampshire community as a whole, we're from a legislative standpoint, we're saying wait till next year, and we at the Equinox didn't feel that was a very acceptable solution, regardless of how anybody feels about the specific details of the bill as it stands right now. I definitely think that the work needs to continue to try and get that to a point where something can be done, action can be taken to try and address this problem head on, rather than continuing to try and circumvent the topic, because it's not going to go away. Who knows in the span between now and when this is revisited next year, who knows where we'll be in terms of this issue. I hate to say it, but who knows how many more incidents we're going to see. And so, yeah, to see that be kind of swept away once more is definitely disappointing.
Yeah, I think the reporting on that article was great, looking at that during editorial and sort of seeing they had like a table of all the gun-related bills and their status, and vast majority of them, either weren't considered or they were killed in the committee, or, one thing or the other. But I think one of the things that's so important about it is New Hampshire legislators specifically, and I think, legislators across the country, but our legislator having like 400 plus members, and it's a very confusing at times of the status of various things, because there's just so much to look at and so many different representatives, but sort of distilling it into, this is something that people are asking and people are wondering, what is going on with gun reform in the state? What is the legislature doing better or not doing about it? And I think they did a really good job at sort of making sure that issue's at the forefront, making, both sides of the debate known in terms of what representatives are saying. But yeah, I think we came to the conclusion that something needs to be done about this, and not just keep kicking the can down the road, because I feel like, gun control specifically, no matter what measures you support, I think it's been something that's been discussed very prominently in the past decade, especially in terms of what can we do. And I think at the state level, you see a lot more change and a lot more opportunities for that than the federal level. So I think if you are someone who does feel passionately about it, I think your best avenue is through the state level. And I think that's where knowing your representatives and contacting them is really valuable, because one of the perks, I guess, of having so many different representatives is that you'll have it's like one per 3,000 residents or something if you do the math, but they're a lot more reachable than maybe, a U.S. House member or a senator. And I'm not saying you wouldn't be able to reach those people, but you'll have a higher chance of affecting change, I think, on the local and state level. So I think no matter, what, you have to maintain the pressure on your elected representatives and make your feelings known. I think New Hampshire definitely has a lot of progress that it can make towards enacting, some of these things that have large public approvals about, red flag laws, closing loopholes, universal background checks, things that are agreed upon by even a majority of gun owners. So I think we're very for making those common sense steps towards that goal.
I would say that I think at least just giving these bills, and you could with any sort of topic that people really do care about, whatever the hot button, it shouldn't stall because it's something that people feel passionately about. It should be something that gets an airing, that gets debate, that from all sides of the issue, that brings out information, and then let it get voted up or down either way. But things like this should at least be discussed and not just pushed off, because I think that how do you get anything done? And I don't care what the issue is. Like, how do you get anything done? How do you move forward with anything? And especially, I think it helps it remain a contentious issue the more you don't talk about it publicly and allow all sides to have their say. At least if there's debates, if there's public comment, people can have their say and weigh in. And then I like to think most people are reasonable, and okay, if it fails, it fails, or if it passes, but at least there was a good process in place. And I wanted to pick up on something that you said, because I think it's so important. I think that, and I know, you guys were involved with the youth voter guide that we put together. And I think that one of the things that really stuck with me about that, and just in hearing from people across the state about what they cared about and the issues that they care about, so many of these issues, they're part of the national conversation. But we actually started to take a look at, okay, but what decisions are made locally that most impact you on these issues that you care about? And it's like 80% of the things that actually impact you every day are being made in, those decisions are being made in school boards and select boards and committee meetings and committee hearings at the state level. So to your point, yes, paying attention to what's happening at the state level, contacting your representative, go to those hearings or watch them online. I will admit, my husband and I are huge nerds, and we actually watch planning commission meetings on our date nights because we're that weird. But they're kind of exciting, because once you start paying attention to them, it's stuff that actually impacts you in your everyday life. And you do find yourself wanting to go in and speak during public comment and wanting to participate. And so for as much as sitting through a planning commission meeting may sound like a snooze fest, it's totally worth it, because if you care about abortion access, that's the kind of place that's going to make a decision about whether there's going to be, let's say, a Planned Parenthood or something in your neighborhood, or, you just got to think about it in those issues that you care about in the local level, and figure out where those decisions are being made, and go there and let your voice be heard, because you are a member of the public, and they really answer to you, and reminding people of that, I think, is really important.
And I always say, as like a student coming here, a lot of students from out of state and from out of this region more broadly sometimes feel disconnected from, Keene specifically, but you have to realize, once you're going to college here, you're spending a majority of the year living here, basically.
Yeah.
Anything that's passed in the Keene City Council, that's going to affect you in some way. And then anything that's passed in the state, if you're from out of state, state laws apply to you. So you have a stake in the community, no matter what. So I think it's important to pay attention, at least while you're here. And also, there's potential that you might stay here after graduation if the opportunity presents itself. So if you get a head start on learning the community, then that's even better. But I think it's important to stay tuned, even if people might not think that they're, as much of it's as much of a concern to them, but it is. It's just as much of a concern to them as it is to anybody who's lived here their whole life.
Well, and you have a stake in the community. I mean, bring it down to even just dollars. You students boost the local economy. You're paying tuition into the system. You are contributing to the local and state economies. You absolutely have a stake and should have a say in what happens here, for sure.
I mean, that almost brings us around to what I figure could basically be the mission statement of the podcast at this point, which is just, if you want to pick your issue, pick your lane, pick your method, whatever, figure out what you want to do with that, but just get involved and stay involved, find the spot that you want to kind of hunker down and say, I'm going to work on this, and just see what you can get done. And I promise it's probably more than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely think in terms of any given issue, hear what people have to say, let it have the space to kind of breathe and exist in public consciousness, and yeah, just get to work. All right. I think that will close us out for Region and State. So we'll sort of loop back around and we can run through some of our top stories from the rest of the paper this week, starting with news. In honor of Thanksgiving being right around the corner, we wanted to kind of, take that other angle and look at some of the Native American history of the area, of New Hampshire in general, and just sort of take that historical lens and say, there are people who have been here for a lot longer than maybe a lot of us talked about in history class, in elementary school or whenever. And so, who are they? How long have they been there? What is the history there? And just looking at the significance of that, the significance of understanding that, any given place, really, any given place in the whole continent, but, for us as people who are living and studying and, finding our communities here in Keene, understanding who was here before us and the long-standing traditions there, including the ones that have led to our understanding of the Thanksgiving holiday now. And so, yeah, I was super glad to see what ended up being actually a pretty substantial piece from one of your staff writers, Katie. So really solid work on that.
Yeah, I think she did a really good job of blending sort of the informative, but then also getting those student opinions about sort of how they view Thanksgiving as a holiday and sort of what they know about it. And I just think, and we talked about this a little bit before when we were talking on the podcast about the Cohen Center hosting an event about Native American history in the region and sort of highlighting that. But I do still think it's important because in New England, it's a lot of times feels a lot more detached than you look at out west. The tribe presence is so prominent in a lot of ways, but up here there's very few and far between in terms of still active reservations, unfortunately. And so I think learning about that and talking about that more, and it's not one of those things where it's like once you go have a Thanksgiving meal you should feel guilty and you can't do it and whatever, but it's sort of just like spend time with your family and celebrate or not. But if you celebrate, acknowledge that history and realize, what sort of came before us. And I think it did a really good job of sort of hearing what students, their experience with it. And I think it's really valuable. And I think it is an example of a story where we're trying to get our finger on the pulse of sort of, what do, young people, at least here, think about it, because the opinions must be different between generations on this issue as well. So
I think that's great that you guys are kind of providing some context to something we might otherwise take for granted. And I think it's so interesting too. I remember when I moved here, I'm from Michigan originally, and in Michigan, I grew up learning about the Native American tribes all throughout Michigan, and that was just sort of a given. We talked about it. It was included in curriculum, all that kind of stuff. And when I moved here, I think I even remember asking about, well, what's the Native American heritage here? And people were like, I don't think they were here. And I'm like, well, that's literally impossible. So I don't think that's true. But and then in the reporting that I did over the years, some of my best reporting moments have been trying to find out, like, okay, what is the history here? What are the efforts currently underway to sort of bring that back into the consciousness of the people in the state? And it's really been some of the best experiences I've had in reporting was learning about it. And you're right, it's not about feeling bad. It's about celebrating and understanding and acknowledging that there were people here before Europeans came, and it's good to understand all of history, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's kind of like a family. Like you've got some good parts, you got some bad parts, and you still get together at Thanksgiving and you talk with each other. So I think, but I think it's really good that you do that for your readers. I think it's important to understand the full context and history of things, and yeah, you can still enjoy yourself. I think.
Yeah, and I think, that that is great that like to have the opportunity to report on it and kind of, flesh out your understanding a little more. And when we were looking over this piece and during the editing process, I definitely I learned a thing or two about the Wampanoag tribe that I hadn't known previously. And so, yeah, I mean, I do think that in terms of what we kind of do with the Thanksgiving holiday, as people living in the modern day and trying to kind of improve our understanding of the history of any given region that we're living in. I'd almost like to look at it as an opportunity to learn more and to try and, have a fuller idea of not only what the holiday is and what it can mean in terms of the, relationship of cultures now, but also just, to understand the heritage and cultures of the people who were here before European settlers came.
Yep.
And now I think we can move on to our top story from Student Life this week, which is, another one of our pieces where we kind of go and see what students think. In this case, we went around asking what students think of the different options as far as coffee goes in sort of the immediate vicinity of campus or Keene. And so, talking about kind of the pros and cons of both the big chain shops, your Starbucks, your Dunkin', anything like that, but also talking about some of the local places that are around in Keene, like, Prime Roast or The Works or anything like that, Brew Bakers, and so there was some interesting material in there too about the trends over time of what, Gen Z is tending to prefer in their coffee in terms of, I feel like it's almost become kind of a stereotype almost for young people that, everybody has to go to whatever chain and get, the double shot of this and the added flavor of that and, whatever it may be. But yeah, I mean, it's a big thing. That's the way that it sort of trends. And, I do think you look at some of the info that was sourced and, these big chains are more likely to have kind of a diverse range of options when it comes to that sort of thing. So in that way, I think it can be preferable. But then at the same time, local places can offer, really unique atmosphere and kind of maybe more specialized options that are tailored to the audience that they know they're catering to. And so, again, it can kind of be pros and cons either way. And definitely, I think the student body is split in that way.
Yeah, it is just pretty wild to observe just how like universal and ubiquitous really coffee and caffeinated beverages are on campus. So many people consume them, and from various different places and with various different means, and it's just I don't know. It's just seeing what people are like going for nowadays in comparison to like historically, and now I think it's kind of like the convergence between having the caffeine trend and then also like something that's been even reported on by like national outlets like the sweet treat economy because it's like these beverages that are sugary and they have all these different flavorings have become such a big hit, and the desire to indulge in something that's just good for your short-term satisfaction of it's sort of like going out to get ice cream, but then now that's being it's going into the realm of like putting so many like different things into a coffee to the point where that also is kind of just the sweet treat in question. So I think it's sort of a trend story in that way, which are always important pieces to do because that's what people are thinking of. And again, getting the thoughts of the student body, I think it could be beneficial also to local coffee shops in terms of what people want and what they might be doing well and what they think that they could do to appeal more directly to young people. So I think it's a good piece in achieving those goals as well.
Okay, I have 1,000 questions about this.
Great.
This is fascinating to me. Okay, first of all, I have a wild theory that I completely just made up right now.
Oh,
but
good.
the reason I think this might be a trend among Gen Z is because timeline wise, like you guys are close enough to being still kids, but but heading towards adulthood, and coffee inherently tastes terrible. And you guys, you still have your taste buds intact. Like you haven't ruined them really enough over time enough. So yeah, you got to add stuff to make it actually taste good because coffee is likely a little more sophisticated than ice cream. So like if you're drinking coffee, you're a little more sophisticated. So that's my wild theory that I have nothing to base it on other than just gut instinct.
I'd buy it.
Right? So it sounds plausible. Then my other questions. So I think that's really interesting. So did you find that the people, was it like split among the people that you talked to that preferred chains to, I'm just curious how much the atmospherics weigh on the actual decision. Like did the students like choose the places that they wanted to go because of atmospherics? Like did they choose those more because that had that atmosphere, or did they choose the opposite? Did they choose the chain store for convenience and variety? What did you guys find just in who you were talking to?
I think overall we ended up finding that overall people of our age group are probably going to be more likely to go to the place that has these sweet beverages that they're looking for.
Really?
So I think in a lot of cases the chains are going to win out.
Yeah.
I think that is also what some of like the data that we referenced tends to back up. Is that not even just here but broadly that tends to be the case. I do think that we are seeing kind of a slow, and I mean this is just like my own personal observations. So I don't know, but I do think that we are starting to see maybe more local places that are saying we could probably do that. Like, it's probably not that hard to figure out how to put some sweet stuff that tastes good into coffee.
Exactly.
And offering some more of those options and maybe starting to draw in more of that sort of demographic of people who are looking for that. So I do think that overall the just pure like these are the items we have. Mm-hmm. I think that probably does outweigh the atmosphere of any given place. And, I think that that's something that is kind of uniquely, it's almost uniquely American in the sense that, like, I feel like as a nation, we have such a reputation for just like go, go, go all the time. And so, I mean, for one thing, I think that is well represented by the fact that coffee is such a,
right.
A commodity for us. But also just the fact that I don't think as many people are hanging around in coffee shops anymore. And so I think the atmosphere maybe is, and again, this is totally my own speculation, but I think maybe the atmosphere is becoming less of a commodity. It's all about what is the item I can get from this place, and then I can grab it and go, and then I'm off to whatever my next task is.
Well, and that's where my question came from, because when I was in college, that's why I'm so surprised by what you just said, because when I was in college, and it wasn't totally that long ago, it was like maybe 20, 25 years, something like that, I never drank, I always drank coffee. I never drank like Dunkin' Donuts or Tim Hortons, whatever they had in Michigan. Never. I only ever drank it at a coffee shop. And I really went there because it was a cool place to hang out. Like, they would have events, or it was just, I could see my friends or meet somebody or just like sit and feel, worldly, like I'm in a French cafe or whatever. But that's so funny that in a relatively short period of time that seems to have shifted. It's just interesting. I would love to know the sociology behind that. And,
Yeah.
I do think a big part of it is also the convenience aspect when you're thinking
Yeah.
about like students getting up before their 8 a.m. class or before 10 a.m. class, and then you roll over out of bed. You could just open like the Boost mobile ordering app and get something from the on-campus Starbucks and grab and go to your class versus, just not really. I mean, you could like walk to like McDonald's from campus and get a coffee from there if you wanted, but it's really like within walking distance and in a reasonable amount of time, you'd have to add on a lot of time to your morning routine, I guess, in order to go out of your way to go somewhere else rather than just on campus. So I think that's probably a large consideration.
That's a really good point.
So, maybe if there was like within direct proximity of campus, coffee shops, or there was a more presence of that, then things might be a little different. But I do think it is unfortunate, sort of the decline in having. Someone did an opinion about this last year. Our former opinions editor Nico about like lack of third places, which is like you got school and like work are like the first and like second places, like community interaction. But then there's not those extra places where you can just go and sort of feel the community and sort of build connections there. So I think there are some things that are lost in there, but I do think our local coffee shops have done a good amount to try to do the community outreach. Brew Bakers and Terranova, they put on those like concerts and shows over there, and so I think they're still trying, and it's good that we have those, and I think it is important to, if you have the ability to still go out and support those, obviously. Although I know it's a struggle with walking distance and then also convenience, but sometimes it's like if you can go out of your way and do that and really show support, then I think that's good.
Definitely. The other thing I wanted to add is just that in terms of like these kind of trend stories or what are people talking about stories, I wanted to give a shout out to our student life editor Orion, who has been kind of killing it with coming up with the concepts for these types of stories. I feel like we've had a fair few really solid ones over the course of the semester. All right, I think we can go ahead and move on to our top story from Arts and Entertainment this week, which is a kind of a group profile on some folks that some people might have seen around campus at various different performances, usually in collaboration with some of our other student orgs. The band Splatter, who I've also had the fortune of being able to see live as well as interview on a couple occasions. And so honestly, this was kind of a long time coming in terms of giving them sort of the spotlight to say, check these guys out. Because, even as recently as this semester, they performed at the Rocktoberfest event that the Social Activities Council put on, which was a super fun time. And so the ability to kind of look at this group of music education majors who I actually didn't know until I was editing this, that apparently they'd initially come together and tried to form a new ensemble. We have our variety of music ensembles in the department. There's the percussion ensemble, brass ensemble, really, and there's an option for just about anybody in the department, but they had tried to pull together a rock ensemble. That didn't end up playing out, but they were able to sort of still pull together the recruitment for that to create Splatter, and they've gone on to play, at parties and some different on-campus concerts, and I definitely hear people mention that name, just walking around campus, people will talk about, seeing them perform, or, what maybe they're going to be doing next. And so, yeah, I was just super glad to be able to kind of shine that light on them, again, finally, to say, hey, check this out. The student band is doing really cool work, and kind of open up the larger conversation around, like, we always need more student bands. There's never too many, or even really enough, people who are just going out there and saying, let's bring music to this community of people, our age group, our fellow students, and really just liven up the campus community.
I think something about student-led bands is just such like a uniquely college experience of just having the space where people can come together and really make something of their own, and really sort of be the soundtrack to a lot of different things and events around campus. Such a cool thing to me. Students who create like any type of art and really have that passion for what they do, but with bands in particular, just seeing people come together and really focus on, showcasing their ability and what they can do. I think it's just it's just amazing to me, and I totally agree that we need more student bands, and anybody that can play any instrument should talk to the others who can also, and then see what can happen, because I think that they've had a good go about it so far, and I'm looking forward to whatever they got going next. And yeah.
So I do not get out a lot because I'm very busy and I have children and whatnot. But what I have noticed, and even back before when I did go out more, there is not a lot of live music just generally that you can go and see. And again, I've lived in other places where, like, even on weekdays, you could go to a coffee shop, or you could go somewhere and there's a musician playing, or a little band playing, or they're playing at a bar or whatever. And I have never really seen that around here, a little bit here and there. So this is my plea to students at Keene State College who play music. Please, please, please come off campus and please give us some music out here. Help your community by playing out, because honestly, I miss live music. I love live music. There is nothing like listening to a live band with a bunch of people who really get into it. There's dancing, or even just it creates a great mood. Like, there's just nothing like it. So please, please, please play out in Greater Keene.
Absolutely. I live music is so just amazing and important for any given community. And I do think, I remember when I did interview Max Oreo from Splatter for the Rocktoberfest story, I remember him saying that one of the things the band was really honing in on at the time was to just pull together a really solid live set. And I think that is, for one thing, I think it's just great to have like that goalpost to just, really throw themselves at, because I definitely think all those musicians are so dedicated. I really think that they're just striving every day to make the band even better. But, definitely anybody who has that, under their belt and can take that somewhere, bring those live sets wherever you go,
Yes.
As many places as you can, because, there's always people wanting to hear more.
For sure.
And I think we can move into our top sports story from the week, which is highlighting the cross country, both men's and women's teams, and their go about it at regionals. And I'll just jump right in and lead with the fact that we got to give a shout out to Equinox staff Jake Velasquez, who has throughout the entirety of the semester just been really leading the charge and just having such an amazing career, and actually just has placed as number one in the region, and so we're super proud to see him, continue to just really outdo himself, and prove that he's a star, and so he'll be moving on to it's Indiana, right?
Yeah.
He'll be headed there to continue competing, and I can't wait to see where he takes it next.
Yeah, it's such like an odd situation, kind of like that college papers are put in uniquely, where we have like people that are on the track team and cross country, and then our webmasters on like the swim team, and it's like that's something that you don't get, where you have to like navigate it and like in the professional world, I think, because you don't see like LeBron James freelancing for like the Columbus Dispatch or whatever.
If
but like,
True.
true. But like, yeah. So obviously, like, our sports editor Jacob Bensko wrote this piece, and he had to mention the fact, obviously, that he went on to the Nationals. But
Because that's news.
Yeah.
That's huge news.
yeah. So you had to do that, but we can't interview him, but if he wasn't doing anything for us, we would have already done a profile on him by now.
Right.
So
to explain a little bit for folks who might not know, in the journalistic profession, we definitely take very seriously the ethics behind a conflict of interest, and so for us, if we were to have done a profile on Jake, he would have to be somebody not affiliated with us as a paper, because otherwise it gets messy, to put it just simply. But so I just wanted to make sure everybody, kind of had the understanding of like what we're looking at in terms of something like that. We definitely feel the need to mention it because it is such just amazing, huge news in the world of KSC athletics. But at the same time, it kind of hurts us sometimes when we have to say, ooh, that'd be such a good profile, but can't do it.
Yeah, and it's just also crazy too, like how, he comes to every single meeting every week, and then always comes up with, new video ideas, and is producing multimedia content on a weekly basis, while also being like the top athlete in the program, basically. That's like, he came out of nowhere. He's coming from another college and then coming here, and then sort of just showed up to one of the first meetings, maybe the first one, and just started making videos from there. And I think he's been able to, the fact he's been able to balance that is just great. And but besides that, there's other athletes that also got honors in the regional competition there. So shout out to them as well. And I think overall did a pretty good job. Even getting to that level in the first place is something to be proud of. So I think, congratulations to everybody.
Yeah, huge showing from all the athletes there, and so definitely, excited to see where everybody can take it in the future, and just continue to really show up and show that we've got such a strong program there. So super proud of everybody, and like you said, we've got athletes that are part of our e-board, and so we definitely like to stay kind of tapped into that world and be able to say, like, just look at all the great work they're doing.
Oh, you're looking at me like I know stuff about sports.
Just giving you the opportunity if you feel.
I will say congratulations to your staffer. That is amazing. I also think it's, just from my experience in journalism, to find not one but two journalists who are also good at sports is really cool. That's very rare. So congrats to all of you.
Well, I think that will do it for this week's episode. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Noxcast. I hope that you will join us again for our next recap. We are not publishing a paper the week of Thanksgiving, but we will be back and ready to get back into the flow of the news as soon as we come back from break. I also want to extend very special thanks to the composer of the music for Noxcast, our very own Equinox alum, Zach Keenan, as well as the designer of the Noxcast graphic, our very own Equinox staffer, Elijah Fisher. Until next time, I've been your host, Charlotte King.
And I've been Nathan Hope, and thank you, Melanie, for joining us this week.
It has been such a pleasure. Thank you both so much for having me.